A good Thursday to you, Central Georgia, and a happy first day of the Georgia National Fair. We'll talk a little bit more about that beautiful forecast that we have in store for the first couple days of the fair, but then we have some new things to talk about. Our latest update in the drought monitor did come out, and of course we have to talk tropics this time of year. Now that Hurricanes Imelda and Hurricane Umberto has completely dissipated, we have two other potential areas that have been outlined by the National Hurricane Center. So we'll talk about what implications those could have to our potential forecast, but one of them is a little bit too far away to say for certain as of right now. Here's a look at your latest update with the drought monitor. So this was taken as of this past Tuesday. Overall, your forecast hasn't changed too much since Tuesday. We did get a couple of rain showers, but the biggest change that we saw, in fact, I believe the only change, is many of our south and southeastern counties are outlined in a moderate drought now. So that's a step above those abnormally dry conditions that everyone else in central Georgia is under, with the exception of the western side of Upson County, who still is under a moderate drought. But we did see that severe drought maybe change a little bit of a shape over along the county line, or excuse me, the state line of Georgia and Alabama. So it's kind of a dividing line depending on where you live. If you live down in Dublin, Eastman, down in Telfair County and McRae, Vidalia, over into Wrightsville, you guys are under those moderate drought conditions, but areas like Warner Robins, Perry, Macon, up to Milledgeville, Eatonton, you guys are just simply under some abnormally dry conditions, which isn't really anything to fret about. But what exactly does that moderate drought mean? Well, here's what it means. It's talking about gardens, lawns, and those flower pots. They're going to require more water throughout the day. So you're going to want to carve out maybe a time in the morning, a time in the evening to go out and make sure that all that vegetation is staying well hydrated, or maybe make plans to time the sprinkler for a couple times throughout each and every day, just in order to make sure that they're getting some form of hydration, because Mother Nature is not bringing any over the course of the next couple of days. Stream and pond levels are actually going to be a lot lower, and it can result in some warmer water temperatures. Think about this like you think about the pool. The deep end of the pool is a lot cooler than, say, the shallow end of a pool. So obviously when the water levels with streams and ponds get a little bit lower, those water temperatures are going to be a little bit warmer. And with the water levels being a little bit lower, that may be the reason for the gator actually being in the McDonald's parking lot a couple days ago. Maybe the swamp was just a little bit too low, or the water was a little bit too warm for his liking. Tree stress does start to begin. And that, or what we mean by that, is going to be premature leaf fall, some stunted growth, some other things you may have noticed with some trees, maybe some leaning, maybe some branches starting to die off. Premature leaf fall is probably the most noticeable impact. I know I was seeing that a lot yesterday. I saw a lot of leaves in the yard and out on the roads, and I thought, okay, maybe we're starting to finally get into that fall season. Well, that's kind of a misleading factor right now, because any leaves that are continuing to fall are just because trees haven't been getting a whole lot of hydration, and it's giving you a bit of that false fall feel, at least with the image. So those are some of the things that we're starting to see with at least a moderate drought. None of these impacts are very drastic whatsoever, but it is getting into kind of a precursor of where more severe droughts and maybe even exceptional droughts can have those impacts on a much worse scale, and that's where we're going to start to see maybe the dying off of plants and such. So we're going to continue to keep our fingers crossed that Mother Nature does eventually bring us some rain. The saving grace has been, yes, the temperatures and the forecast has been mighty nice. So we will continue to take these stretch of dry days if it does mean that we're finally going to have some drier and some cooler air as we finish out the work week. Rain chances are back this weekend, and we are keeping our eyes on a front around the midweek next week, and that's going to have some good implications to our forecast in the form of widespread rain, I do believe, and along with that, maybe drying our forecast out once again as we head into the closing weekend of the Georgia National Fair. Here's a look across central Georgia. I was going to say crystal clear skies, but we can actually see a couple scattered clouds, more so down in Houston County as we look in Warner Robins, and then a few here at the Georgia National Fairgrounds. The big thing that I've been showing all morning long has been these flags down here across all the vendors around the carnival area of the Georgia National Fair. They have been whipping all morning long. We're continuing to see a steady breeze and even some occasional gusts that have gotten up to about 17 or 20 miles per hour throughout the morning hours. We'll take a live look at what those current conditions are right now as we go into the 11 a.m. hour. So still a few areas hanging out in the 60s, 69 in Sandersville, 69 in Eatonton, along with that Forsyth, 68, the coolest temperature we see across central Georgia over in Thomaston, but most areas are around 70, 71, or 72 degrees. And then our warmest numbers are found in Rochelle and Cordele, sitting at 73 and 74 degrees. So 74 for our warmest temperature here in our neck of the woods. Once again, continuing to be very similar to areas over to the east and the northeast, but down towards the south, you are still having some of that muggier air in the picture. New Orleans can't quite claim the title for itself today. You can see Houston over to the west matching that 84-degree mark. Areas farther to the north, a little bit cooler, somewhere in the 70s. And eventually you still have some 60s in areas like Washington, D.C., up into Indianapolis. 62 over in Denver, and the Rocky Mountains are nice and chilly with that blue color just to the west of Denver. Another story that we did see all throughout yesterday that we were talking about, we were holding on to a little bit of humidity. These dew point temperatures just continue to drop. So we have that north and northeasterly breeze that's ushering in those drier surface dew points. And it is resulting in less and less rain chances over the next couple of days, but also it does give you more of a true fall feel with some drier air in the forecast, as opposed to holding on to some of that humidity, which gives you more of a summertime feel. So here's a look at that. You can see the winds continuing to usher in from the east and the northeast, from areas like North Carolina, South Carolina, and that's where you're starting to see these areas of no shaded color whatsoever. So it's more of just the landscape of the surface of the earth, and that's what you see up here on your legend on the far right side of the screen. It doesn't necessarily span too far over to the west, but this is very similar to a wedge setup that we typically talk about, where some of that cooler and drier air kind of wedges up against the Appalachian Mountains and continues to flow down towards the south and the southwest. Not necessarily a wedge setup in itself, but we just continue to have drier air. So it doesn't really matter what kind of setup we have, as long as we continue to keep that drier air in the forecast. Feels like temperatures are also going to be right there around what your actual temperatures are. Still plenty of areas that feel like the upper 60s, but most of central Georgia finds themselves in the low 70s. This has been the story. Take a look at this. Every area that we do have, well, almost every area, we have a couple locations that aren't popping up some winds like Sandersville up into Eatonton. Sustained winds anywhere from about 10 to 16 miles per hour. Dublin, 16 mile per hour sustained wind. The same in Cochran, 16 mile per hour wind in Macon. But those occasional gusts are already even above the range that I was thinking so far for today. How about a 29 mile per hour gust in downtown Macon, 25 mile per hour gust in Cochran. Most everyone is in the upper teens or somewhere in the low 20s for what those wind gusts are getting up to. Now the good thing is, if you have plans to head out in the evening hours, those winds are not looking to be as gusty, but we are going to hold on to the gusty winds for most of the early afternoon time period. Hour by hour, your temperatures do not have much more of an increase to go. Our Meteogram is topping out at 78 degrees. Now you may say, Alex, it was only topping out around 80 or 81 yesterday, maybe into the lower 80s in a select few areas, but we hit a high temperature in the upper 80s. So yes, we definitely overshot what the models were saying yesterday, but I'm sure many of you were the same as me. It did feel mighty nice outside just because of that drier air being present, and when you had the occasional breeze, you weren't really noticing that warm temperature or those warm temperatures whatsoever. So upper 70s for a high temperature today. What did I have forecasted for central Georgia? Well, we have to talk about yesterday first and foremost. 87 for a high temperature, 3 degrees above average. Your morning low was at 59 degrees compared to the average low of 60 degrees this time of year. 39 degrees, the record low. That is getting way too close to freezing temperature for my liking, but thankfully it's not 1967. In 2019, of course, we've continued to see the records for consecutive days. Back in 2019, 98 degrees. Imagine this time frame about 6 years ago, because we were getting the fair kick started. Yes, it was a very warm start to the fair 6 years ago in time. Your departure of rain is now down to around 3 3/4 of an inch of rain above where we should be at this time of year. Sunrise at 7:29 yesterday. Sunset was at 7:19. So we'll continue to tell you what time that sunrise and sunset will be for your Thursday in the following graphics. Cooler high temperatures for today. That's the main difference between today and yesterday. We're still going to have the breeze. In fact, we're going to have more so of a breeze than what we had over the last couple of days. Sunny skies all around central Georgia. Lower humidity, but the temperatures themselves should be down, and it's really going to give you a very pleasant feel. I would highly encourage you, if you don't have any outdoor plans later this afternoon into the evening hours, to make some, because we don't get high temperatures in the upper 70s paired up with that low humidity and a nice breeze and sunny skies very often in the early time frame of the fall season. Is typically once we get into the later portion of fall before some numbers like this start to settle in. 84 is your average high temperature this time of year, so running about 5 degrees below average for this afternoon. Satellite and radar picture may show a cloud or two and maybe even a couple of sprinkles that are trying to pop up, but I really don't think that's the case. That may just be some backscatter on our satellite and radar picture. Not only is that the story in central Georgia, it's the story across the entire state of Georgia until you get to these coastal areas that are slightly more humid and maybe some passing cloud cover up here in the Appalachian Mountains stretching into northeastern Georgia. But the southeast is a mighty quiet picture. It will remain that way for the foreseeable future. The best rain chances that you will see will be down to our south and our southeast. And now keep that in mind as we go across the next couple of days. Mostly sunny skies, maybe some passing cloud cover as we head into the evening and nighttime hours tonight. 9 p.m. will be when the official fair is closing, but I was just doing some talking with David, and I do imagine that many of you are probably going to stay out a little bit later because the rides are still going to go on until 11 p.m. and along with that, some of those carnival games, some of those food vendors, maybe wanting a late night snack, you still will be good to go. Nothing in the way of rain chances to worry about for your Thursday. As we go into Friday, you may see a few more clouds in the picture to start out the morning hours. We start to see some higher level clouds insert the forecast, kind of moving opposite of the wind. So these are just going to be the winds at the surface that you see indicated by these arrows. These clouds, because you can see how thin they are, it's a very faint gray color. Those are going to be in the higher levels of the atmosphere, so the winds are propelling those a different direction than the ones at the surface. So some mostly sunny skies. This cloud cover isn't going to do a very good job of blocking the sunshine whatsoever. And we've been talking about everything in terms of the fair as of recently, but it's also important to remember tomorrow is Friday. That's another football week here in central Georgia. Take a look at this. 5 p.m. tomorrow, we are going to have some mostly sunny skies, no rain chances in the forecast. The last model run was hinting at a couple of scattered sprinkles in our southernmost counties. That doesn't look to be the case anymore. We're just going to continue with the mostly sunny skies with the exception of that higher level cloud cover all the way into the night and eventually into the overnight hours, which take us to Saturday morning. Now Saturday morning, we start to see some patchy and denser cloud cover built into the picture. That will be a theme with Saturday. I think it's going to be a story of mostly cloudy skies as opposed to plenty of sunshine on Thursday and into Friday. The thin and minuscule chance of maybe seeing an isolated sprinkle, maybe a pocket of steady rain. Overall, this is not a very impressive rain chance, but if you do catch any, it's going to be in that late afternoon to evening time frame as we go into the second day of the weekend, which will be Saturday, and we continue to keep the gloomy atmosphere in the picture as we transition into midnight and then eventually 1 a.m. on Sunday, where I do think our rain chances are going to start to improve as we go into Sunday, because each and every day we'll see a slight uptick in the moisture. So today I do believe our dew point temperatures and the amount of moisture in the air is going to be at a low for the foreseeable future. We'll see a steady uptick in those numbers day by day, but it's still not resulting in any rain chances on Friday and only a minuscule 10% chance of rain as we go into Saturday afternoon. A mostly cloudy icon is what I have for Saturday. You'll see your fair share of sunshine. It still will allow for a warm up into the low 80s, but that's going to mark the beginning of a slight warming trend. I think what we're really going to notice the warming trend is going to be on these kind of gray numbers that you see, those morning low values. 58 for a morning low on Friday, up to 61 on Saturday. And remember, the more clouds you have in the picture during the early morning hours, that's when you're going to have some of your warmer morning low temperatures. And in fact, your morning low, the average has dipped down to 59 degrees. We'll talk more about that on the graphic that we show. But for your fair forecast specifically, I showed you guys this yesterday. I might have had a degree or two of fluctuation, but overall, your fair forecast, nothing short of immaculate as you head out to that first day of all of the fair fun that is in store. Crystal clear around 3 p.m. and then as you transition into the evening, you may see a few clouds. That's going to be the only thing worth noting. Lower temperatures down into the low 70s as you go into 6 p.m., 9 p.m. for closing time for the actual fair. Temperatures somewhere in the upper 60s, and I imagine they'll get down somewhere into the mid to maybe even low 60s if you're planning on staying till 11 p.m. to ride all the rides and eat some good fair food. Sunset tonight, 7:17. That's going to be an important time to keep in the back of your head if you're going to be searching for that beautiful sunset fair photo. I imagine we're going to have lots of those sent into the Weather Network or here at 13 WMAZ. And if you don't have any plans to put those into our social media platforms, then please do. We love to see all of your fair fun, and we always love to see a gorgeous sunset here on the weather team. But the winds sustained from about 5 to 15 miles per hour with the occasional gusts up to 25 miles per hour. I think that the winds are going to subside just a little bit as we go into the evening hours. I'll show you that on our future view wind gusts, which is after our humidity talk right now. So we continue to see this area of the landscape of the earth, no color whatsoever, build down towards the south and the southwest, but not necessarily hitting these areas in southeast Georgia. It does look like we're going to hold on to the humidity at least until we get into tomorrow. And then I think then all of central Georgia will start to see that light green color surge up a little bit more. So maybe a slightly more noticeable humidity as we go into your Friday. And then Saturday, it does look like all of our dew point temperatures are probably back somewhere into the 60s. And we even see swampy areas of dark green that are present closer to the coast and down into the peninsula of Florida, which are those dew point temperatures into the 70s. So here's a look at your wind gusts. Let's go ahead and go into this evening, or more so into the nighttime hours. You're only seeing those gusts up to maybe 13, 14 miles per hour. Those shaded areas of yellow are going to be where you see the gusts up to 20, maybe 25 miles per hour. So I do expect the breeze to subside and not be as widespread gusty as what we have currently later on this evening. But very similar to today, the first couple of hours tomorrow morning are also going to be nice and breezy with the occasional gusts up to 20 to 25 miles per hour. Going into Friday evening, the winds try to subside a little bit, but a select few areas are still holding on to those breezy conditions. And then we go into Saturday, same story, different day. It looks like this is going to be the 4th, 5th, and 6th days in a row that we're holding on to a steady breeze in the forecast. It has been pretty gusty and pretty breezy virtually each and every day so far this work week, and we will continue that pattern into the weekend, and no signs of that breeze leaving as we go all the way to Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Still having some gusts even above 25 miles per hour. How about 27 miles per hour down in Vidalia? So your afternoon high temperatures, I did mention they're going to slightly warm, and yes, maybe only into the low 80s. Each of the next 5 days will still be below average of that 84-degree mark, but I imagine it's not too long before that average high dips down to 83 degrees because we have seen our morning low temperature start to dip down maybe a degree or two each and every week. Here's a look at your morning low temperatures. At the lowest, we will be below average, and that looks to be tomorrow morning, 58 for a morning low. But if we continue to keep that breeze present in the morning hours, our temperatures might not get as low as forecast. That's what we had present this morning. I think we had 1 or 2 upper 50s at that 59-degree mark. I like to go on the bottom end of these lower morning low temperatures just to cover the bases. Most areas might be a couple degrees warmer, but overall that's going to be kind of the bottom threshold of how cool it could feel. But it is going to feel mighty nice and still have a bit of a chill in the air, even if you are in the low 60s. And that breeze just kind of helps it make it feel a bit chillier as you head into the early morning hours. But those morning lows are going to rebound eventually into the mid 60s by the time we go into Sunday and Monday. That's what happens when you have a good amount of cloud cover in the forecast that's trapping all of that surface heat that you received the day before, and it's really just bouncing off the bottom of that cloud cover, reflecting back down to the surface. And it's kind of the opposite effect in the afternoons. That cloud cover, any more radiation that's trying to come down from the sun, the top of that cloud cover reflecting that radiation back out into the atmosphere, not allowing it to reach the surface. So now let's go into the humidity day by day. You will notice that Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, we start to see some decent humidity back in the picture. So each and every day will get slightly more humid than the next. By the time we roll into Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, I think that's going to be mainly attributed to some tropical moisture in nature, but that's going to lead to an increase in the rain chances as we go into your extended forecast. So let's talk about the long-range future view. You will see lots and lots of widespread rain, not necessarily over central Georgia, but in the near vicinity of us and all over the southeast. We continue to see good agreement right now, and even some shades of yellow, maybe even some shades of red or pink that are right here off the Atlantic coast. Does it look like something tries to organize tropically? We'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. But no, there's not too much model agreement. I think you should just plan on at least some scattered showers at the very least. Sunday afternoon and evening, Monday afternoon and evening, and Tuesday afternoon and evening, because it continues to look like spill paint just about everywhere on the long range models. But then Wednesday, we can finally start to see an indication of maybe a linear shape with a bunch of rain. That's going to indicate a frontal boundary that will continue to push through the south and the southeast throughout the later hours on Wednesday all the way into Thursday. So this is where things stand right now. We're more than likely definitely going to see some timing fluctuation with this, but hopefully we can get the rain chances completely out of here on Thursday, because take a look at what's to the northwest of us. Just some partly cloudy skies here and there, but nothing in the way of widespread rain. It does look like that front that comes through next week should hopefully usher in at least some drier air. Can we get some cooler air to follow? That is going to be the question. So we did just get our 11 a.m. update, and Hurricane Imelda is now a post-tropical storm as it has moved past Bermuda. Probably had some implications over there on the island as it moved through as a Category 2 storm, 75-mile-per-hour winds. So that's still technically a Category 1 hurricane, but it's moving into an area where we classify it as post-tropical now, and it really is beginning the weakening trend. But it's going to be very steady. As you can see, these timestamps go all the way out into sometime into Sunday evening. And then I do imagine the moisture associated with Imelda maybe combining with what's left over from Umberto, which just continues to flow all the way across the Atlantic. Could have some implications over in western and northwestern Europe, but take a look at how fast it's moving now. 29 miles per hour. 2 days ago, Imelda was moving at 7 miles per hour, so moving at about 4 times the speed it was as of 2 days ago, but your winds are still relatively strong. Pressure 980 millibars, and Imelda will continue to gradually weaken. Might take a turn back up to the north before going up to the northeast, but not going to impact any land masses in this portion of the Atlantic Ocean. So we have Imelda up there in the North Atlantic. What's in store for the rest of the Atlantic? What do we need to keep our eye on? Well, as of this morning, late last evening, we did have 2 potential areas of development outlined from the National Hurricane Service. The first of which is going to be this big yellow shaded area. There's no X associated with it. We'll start to get that when we can actually pick apart the tropical wave itself. But this is an area that we are watching for some form of a tropical system to try to push off the west coast of Africa. And this is a prime area for development right now. When we typically show this, you can see a lot of that faint brown hue over here just to the west of Africa. We have no Saharan dust present right now in this portion of the Atlantic Ocean. So whatever does try to move across this portion of the central Atlantic, 20% chance of developing over the next 7 days. It's going to be a while before whatever this system comes to be is going to try to get its act together. But I do think it has a pretty conducive environment for development. It's nothing you need to worry about in your short-term forecast, really for the next 7 days. In fact, it's probably going to be a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks before this system, if it even is to get its act together, would make its way over towards the United States, maybe over into portions of the Caribbean, and I wouldn't really note this, but next week is going to be fall break, so maybe some of you, your family, your friends are planning on taking an extended cruise that goes down to, say, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands. This is something you'll want to keep an eye on as you go on those cruises. Obviously, don't cancel any plans this close to the actual event, but we could have something that tries to form out here in the Atlantic, and it does look like right now going dead to the west in the Lesser Antilles, the Windward Islands, those areas in the East Caribbean are kind of in the direct path of whatever does try to form. Now let's go over to our second area of development, which is a lot closer to home. And I did mention on the long-range models, it does look like something tropical does try to organize. As of right now, it's down here in the Bahamas. So you may remember this area because this is exactly the area that Hurricane Imelda did go through and really started to get its act together once it moved just north of the Bahamas, eventually became a tropical storm and then a hurricane. Well, what Imelda is leaving behind is going to be a remnant frontal boundary, and that's going to kind of act as a bit of an axis of lift. So there's a lot of moisture still left in this area. It's obviously very humid and very muggy in this portion because this is the Bahamian water. This is some warm water that's a little bit shallower where you do have a lot of islands. We were just talking about that. Shallower water is a whole lot warmer. It's only at a 10% chance of developing over the next 2 days. 10% chance of developing past that 2-day window. And right now the area outline does go over into the northeastern Gulf, but the long-range models that we did showed maybe something trying to surge up to the north over the next couple of days, really into the end of the weekend. Whatever does form, whatever doesn't form, I do think it sends us some increased rain chances here in the south and the southeast, but it's still way too far out to determine if this is going to be something of a named storm, possibly, maybe going to have some implications in terms of some tropical storm force winds or not, but it will be something we look out for over the course of this weekend because obviously it's a less active time of tropical season, but hurricane season is still going on until the very end of November. So when we crossed off Umberto and we crossed off Imelda, the next couple of names to claim are going to be Jerry, Karen, and Lorenzo. I only outlined 2 potential areas of development, but we'll also be watching kind of down near Yucatan for maybe a potential area of development that hasn't necessarily gotten designation yet, but we have seen some really extended long-range models try to hint at something getting its act together around there. But nothing to worry about right now. I'm just going ahead and looking way ahead into the future. Want to let you know about what could be next down in the tropics because it hasn't really been a very active season in terms of a lot of impacts, at least for our area in central Georgia or the southeast. So we want to continue to keep our eyes peeled until we get to that buzzer sound, which will happen on November 30th. And in terms of what we have seen so far, on average, we typically see those 14 named storms in a typical hurricane season. Half of those are normally hurricanes, and then 3 of those hurricanes do get Category 3 or greater designation, which is going to classify as a major hurricane. Colorado State normally does a very good job with their forecast. They give us specific numbers. They forecasted an above average season, 17 named storms, 9 of which are hurricanes, and then 4 of those being some major hurricanes. Well, let's take a look at our numbers so far. Right now, we are on pace with the actual number of hurricanes, but we've only had those as actual named storms so far in 2025. So 9 named tropical storms, just under half of those have been hurricanes. So that has been Imelda, that has been Umberto, that has been Gabrielle, and that has been Aaron. And I think Aaron probably had the most implications in the United States, along with Imelda that did have some rip current warnings and maybe some high surf advisories. But take a look at this. This is kind of the most shocking number that we have seen. Of those 4 hurricanes that we've had, 3 of them have been major hurricanes. So that was Aaron, that was Gabrielle, and that was Hurricane Umberto. Imelda got up to Category 2 status, didn't quite make it to that Category 3 status. So we have seen a majority of the hurricanes that have formed so far be major hurricanes. So we are very thankful that all of those have stayed out at sea and simply been mainly fish storms. Even 2 of those major hurricanes have gotten Category 5 designations. But right now we are running below pace for average and well below the pace of what was forecasted so far. We want to continue to keep our eyes peeled because early October we have seen some bad storms on record. Can't ever take your eye off the ball when it comes to hurricane season. Very similar to hitting in the batting cage or a big Little League game that you have coming up. 7-day forecast, Georgia National Fair kicking off today. We'll take that icon off the box on the 7-day, but this fun background is going to continue to remain in the picture. Got the funnel cake stand behind the Thursday box. We have the Ferris wheel behind Friday and Saturday here. You can see the pig race icon down there, and of course, in all its glory, the clock tower, which is over behind your Tuesday and Wednesday boxes. The big thing I want to highlight, we will see increased moisture over the course of this weekend into the beginning of next week, which will result in at least some scattered shower chances right now. We may continue to uptick those rain chances because tomorrow is going to give us a lot better of an idea about what the coverage of rain looks like on Sunday, so we can kind of translate that to what's going to happen on Monday and Tuesday. But what I would plan on is the rain chances starting to be a little bit more widespread on Sunday and those sticking around for Monday and Tuesday. Then as we go into the later hours on Wednesday, as of right now, it does look like that front's going to try to come through. And that may be our best shot at getting some rain and our best shot at alleviating some of those moderate drought conditions. each and every day. High temperature will be below average or right there around average, and your morning low temperatures going to be a couple degrees above average with all the cloud cover that does look to be in your forecast. So that's going to do it for Thursday's edition of your extended forecast. Be sure to tune back here at 11 a.m. tomorrow for a whole weekend preview of all your fair fun, football Friday night activities, and anything else that you have planned with friends and family as we head into the next couple of days of October and then the first full week of October as we go into next week. Thanks for tuning in.